Hello, this is Monday, June 15th, 2015. Welcome to episode number 52 of the Vanguard Report. You have heard people say, take the red pill. By taking this metaphorical pill, one is awakened into a red pill consciousness, which is really just a quaint way of saying that one becomes politically aware. Around here, we have another concept. We call it spreading the red dye. It means making a tincture or infusion of the red pill essence and injecting this into the cultural water, like, yes, a red dye. That way, people get their taste of the red pill whether they know it or not. Spreading the red dye means spreading political awareness. By making the process ambient rather than internal, we make it inescapable. No need to convert people, no need to make people believe things. We think it is a clever idea to simply make the message a part of the world around them, part and parcel of the world around them, so that they can't argue with it. Better yet, they will think that they thought of it themselves. Yeah, spread the red dye. Spread political awareness. So, I am Fiedelbogen. I am your host for episode number 52 of the Vanguard Report, and my fellow host, Nick Redding, man of Canada, true son of the Alberta Prairie, is with me here today. Nick, say hello to the world.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Redding with Men's Rights Edmonton. You can check out our great YouTube channel, Men's Rights, which is first word Men's Rights, next word Edmonton. I recently had a video get 93,000 views in one day. It's called Let's Identify Some Asshats, and it deals with the feminists in Ottawa going and disrupting another cafe meeting. If you are in Edmonton, or if you are coming to Edmonton, or if you know someone in Edmonton who is interested in spreading the red dye, have them contact me through mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com, or www.mensrightsedmonton.com has a contact us section right in the about part on the top menu there.
Okay. So, Nick, did you ever maybe figure out the source of that sudden tsunami of web traffic to that video?
No, I honestly have no idea what it was. The only thing I can imagine.
Pardon me. Did you look into the YouTube analytics?
Yeah. They come up, like, their results come up like about 2 days after the fact, 1 or 2 days after the fact. And I just looked at it, and I mean, I just did a brief thing just to see how many I got in one day, and it was 93,000, which is pretty edifying.
Edifying. Well, it's surprising. It's good, because you know what they say about publicity.
No, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, that's a statement, a generalization, which is 98% true, I think. Anyway, so yeah, it was 93,000, I think, at first, and last I looked, it was like 96. It just came all at once, and after that, it dropped off. And boy, I sure would love to know where that came from. Somebody must have told somebody. Somebody must have told a lot of people all at once, and we would like to get to the bottom of this mystery. We don't know if this sudden rush of traffic was due to the instigation of a friend or to the instigation of a foe. It's a really intriguing issue there. Anyway, Yeah, that's a lot. More, I don't know if Nick mentioned it or not, but more than the original video got.
Yeah, it's sitting at about 3 times what the original video got, or at about double at the very least. But I mean, I'd say closer to 3 times.
Well, if nothing else, it puts Men's Rights Edmonton on the map. It puts your YouTube channel on the map, in addition to spreading awareness of this incident that took place in Ottawa. So, as we so customarily do here, let's talk about some stuff off of the internet. That's always fun, right? Cue number 1 on your cue list. And what is this? From the WashingtonExaminer.com. And the article is, if I can get it up in my browser so I can read it, man receives sex act while blacked out, gets accused of sexual assault. Boy, I could just spend a half hour talking about that title all by itself. A man was the object of a sex act while he was unconscious. A sex act was imposed on him while he was in no position to say either yes or no. And guess what? He's on the hook for sexually assaulting somebody. Isn't that deliciously ironic? This article, by the way, is written by our good friend Ash Show, a woman who writes for the Washington Examiner, who has, let me say it, shown a strong non-feminist proclivity in her writings. She seems like an on-side person. I see this article has gotten 238 comments. That sounds pretty healthy. Let's dig into the article here. An Amherst College student blacked out, accompanied a fellow student back to her dorm room after drinking in February 2012. While he was blacked out, she performed oral sex on him. Nearly 2 years later, oh, this is delicious. Nearly 2 years later, she would accuse him of sexual assault. So she sexually assaulted him while he was unconscious, and nearly 2 years later, she decides to, let's go say that he raped me or he assaulted me. This is rich, man. This is really rich. And under Amherst, guilty until proven innocent, and even then, as we'll see, still guilty, hearing standards, the accused student was expelled. All right? She performed oral sex on him while he was unconscious. 2 years later, she decides to press charges for sexual assault at Amherst College, and Amherst College kicks him out. Do I need to read any more of this article? I mean, can I just stop right there and let that stand on its own? But let's keep reading. The accused student, using the pseudonym John Doe, is suing the college for denying him due process. His lawyer had discovered text messages that prove the accused student did not initiate the encounter and in no way sexually assaulted the accuser. Despite this evidence, the college refused to open Doe's case. Now, I'm assuming that the text messages revealed what actually happened, the fact that he was blacked out and all of that, which I don't know what she said or how she explained the case or how she spun the story to make it sound like he sexually assaulted her. Either she was lying flagrantly and wildly, or the school authorities just decided to go ahead and call it sexual assault on her. I don't know, but either way, it doesn't look so good. Casey Johnson, co-author of the book about the Duke Lacrosse rape hoax, obtained Doe's lawsuit as well as transcripts from the hearing that found him guilty. Johnson first describes Amherst's Kafkaesque sexual assault rules, which stated goal is to empower, there's that word again, empower victims during hearings rather than determine the truth. They want to empower the victims rather than determine the truth. And part of the truth that they're not interested in determining is whether the victim is indeed a victim in the first place. I mean, part of these legal proceedings, the main part, I would think, is to ascertain what really happened and to determine truth. And part of that truth is to know if the victim is indeed a victim and if the perpetrator is indeed a perpetrator, or if the story is something else. Yes, Nick.
By their standards, the man is the victim. I mean, I don't think that getting a blowjob in your sleep should amount to sexual assault. But
well, we're talking about the technicalities of law here.
Yeah, by the standards of the university, if the guy was blacked out, then he is the victim.
Right. That's exactly by the standards of the university.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching, ostensibly by the standards of the university, I was watching the Sargon of Akkad's coverage of this today, and he was saying that according to them, it seems like with these people, the word victim is interchangeable with woman.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is very much so. Just like feminist is interchangeable with female, misogynist is interchangeable with holds women morally accountable or disagrees with the feminist. Patriarchy is interchangeable with male power. There is a whole lexicon of feminist code speak there, which it would be interesting to do an episode on sometime. But yeah, feminists don't speak English, is the bottom line. They speak a language of their own called femspeak, which cleverly mimics English and might very well be taken as English, but it's not, because words in femspeak have a special, secret, hidden, coded meaning, which is different from the normal sense that those words would have. So, where were we? Johnson notes that the school has adopted the yes means yes definition of consent. When was that ever not the definition of consent? I'd like to know. When has no ever meant yes in terms of consent?
Well, in some bondage communities, they have things called safe words, because for some people, they're in a community where they acknowledge that a lot of the enjoyment does come from saying no when you actually say yes.
So the safe word is like the safe word sets a global variable upon all the language that is used after the safe word has been spoken. So that when you say the safe word, or when you say, I don't know, but somehow they're putting language in a special bubble there where it is agreed upon that words don't necessarily have their accepted everyday meaning.
Yeah, that instead of saying no, a person might say, red light or banana.
Right. But I mean, once you enter that linguistic space, it is understood that words have an esoteric meaning. And it's the same way with feminism. I mean, words among feminists have an esoteric meaning, and social justice warriors have an esoteric meaning, which ordinary people don't necessarily understand. But yes means yes. I would think that yes means consent, and yes would always mean yes, and yes means yes definition of consent. I think that means yes means yes, meaning that there is an actual verbal assent or verbal consent, that they said something instead of just implying that they consent. Yes means yes definition of consent, meaning someone has to ask before performing any sexual act on another person. Okay, there we go. And receive an affirmative response. But the standard provides no way for accused students to prove they obtained such consent. For that matter, given that the sexual act was performed on the accused student, was there any evidence he provided affirmative consent? Now, here's the problem. The main meat of the matter for everything that feminism has to say about rape, or every social innovation that feminism has introduced in the legal system, on the subject of rape, and that is, how do you know if this act occurred between two people with no other witnesses, no recorded audio or video or anything like that, which is the case most of the time? Then there is no way to know who actually did what or who is really telling the truth. And that's the whole problem right there. And for my money, you could take just that and boil the whole rape question down to just that, and throw away such irrelevant red herrings as 90% of rapes go unreported and all that sort of thing, and what really constitutes consent, because if nobody was there to know what actually happened except for the two parties involved, then that makes all of that talk irrelevant. All that matters in the courtroom is who is telling the truth. And customarily, in criminal justice procedure, you need evidence. You're going to say X happened, you need evidence that X actually happened. And this very basic concept seems to have been thrown out the window in the case of rape. And we can thank feminism for that state of affairs. Let's see if I can finish reading through this article. The school also requires drunk students engaging in sexual activity to, quote, be aware of the other person's level of intoxication. Yeah, I think everybody should carry around a blood test kit or a breathalyzer at all times and say, okay, honey, here, open wide, let me take the breathalyzer test. Yeah, that's very romantic. Be aware of the other person's be aware of the other person's level of intoxication, and warns students that an individual may experience a blackout state in which he, she, they appear to be giving consent but do not actually have conscious awareness or the ability to consent. What, like talking in their sleep? Johnson asks how an accused student is supposed to have been aware of another's intoxication or know when they were in a blackout state, as Amherst doesn't provide an explanation. Yeah, well, bad on Amherst there. The entire adjudication process at Amherst, revised after another student claimed the school mistreated her sexual assault accusation, was designed to find guilt. Very telling choice of words there, to find guilt, not to find innocence. Now, innocence, just got to, push that out of the way so you can see the guilt behind it. It was designed to find guilt, Johnson wrote. An accused student may hire an attorney, but that attorney cannot say anything during the hearing. An accused student may receive a campus advisor who is not an advocate for the student. Meanwhile, the accuser's advisor is absolutely their advocate. For Doe, his, quote, advisor was an administrator who lacked tenure and was trained in, are you ready for this? Trained in, quote, unquote, social justice education. Doe was not allowed, yes, we know social justice, there is a narrative of rape culture. There is a narrative that men must be taught not to rape, that rape is a crime, a thing that men do to women, that men are a political class, women are a political class, and that rape is a collective crime, a collective transgression of one political class against another. And as individual, you effectively don't exist anymore. That's what the little phrase social justice says to me. Doe was not allowed to directly cross-examine his accuser, and I've got some noise going on outside my window right now. I don't know if anybody can hear it or not. Maybe not.
It's fine. It comes and goes.
Okay. Well, if it gets too overwhelming, let me know. For Doe, his advisor was an administrator who lacked tenure and was trained in social justice education. Doe was not allowed to directly cross-examine his accuser and could only write down questions for the panel to ask her, leaving no room for follow-ups. The hearing panel, meanwhile, was made up of, quote, student life officials, translation, wet behind the ears kids, and another administrators. Okay, grammatical issue here, and another administrators trained in social justice education, none of whom had tenure. The investigator of the sexual assault claim lacked the subpoena power to actually investigate. Had the investigator been able to properly investigate, they would have uncovered the text messages that proved there was no assault. Okay, now we're getting down to the bottom of this. The defense for this young man was hogtied, was hobbled. They could not properly defend him. And so the prosecution just steamrolled right over him. It railroaded him. This is one of the few cases where we have an actually good idea of what happened the night in question. Doe accompanied the accuser, who was Doe's girlfriend's roommate, to her dorm room. The accuser performed oral sex on a blacked-out Doe. Johnson notes that even the Amherst hearing found Doe's account of being blacked out credible. Doe leaves. The accuser then texted two people. First, a male student she had a crush on. Okay, so she gave the guy a blowjob, and then she sent a text to some heartthrob of hers, whom she invited over after a heavily flirtatious exchange earlier in the evening. Okay, so first she gave a blowjob to the blacked out guy, and then she got on her text and texted this other guy, and I guess invited him over for a blowjob. I don't know. Then a female friend. The accuser said during her hearing that she only texted one friend to help her handle the assault, as she felt, quote, very alone and confused. But her texts with her female friend give no indication of an assault. Rather, the accuser texted her friend, "Oh my God, I just did something so fucking stupid." She then proceeded to fret that she had done something wrong and her roommate would never talk to her again because it's pretty obvious I wasn't an innocent bystander. Okay, that's her story. She waited 2 years to tell this story. But by this time, she decided, I guess, she was an innocent bystander after all. She also complained that the other man, who had come over after the alleged assault, had taken until 5 in the morning to finally have sex with her. I don't know if that's oral sex or just regular sex. Anyway, the accuser found herself friendless after the encounter when her roommate discovered what she had done. Between the encounter with Doe and the accusation, nearly 2 years later, the accuser developed new friends. And as it happens, these new friends were all these new friends were all, quote-unquote, victims advocates. So they coached her. She spilled her guts to her new friends, and they coached her, saying, go ahead, you can nail this guy anyway. When Doe discovered the text messages, he presented the findings to Amherst. The school refused to reopen his case. Casey Johnson sums up the case perfectly. Once again, this is a case in which an accuser, to put it charitably, misrepresented written evidence vital to her credibility, and this same material, her words, showed, if anything, that she initiated sexual contact against a student who even Amherst's panel described as blacked out, Johnson wrote. And yet, according to Amherst, the accuser is a sexual assault, quote, survivor. The case also shows how a male student can be accused of sexual assault even if the evidence suggests he might have been the one assaulted. There we go. That's the end of the article.
You know, it's things like this, like when it says that her, her new friends were victim advocates, and so it doesn't take a genius to realize that they're...
That makes them sound like cult recruiters, lurking in the shadows, waiting to jump on fresh meat.
Like, I watched, I listened to this, and it sounds like a real-life version of Rosemary's Baby. You've ever seen that?
I haven't. I've heard of it, though.
Yeah, it's a movie from the 60s where,
Farrell, yeah.
Yeah, basically a woman gets, she gets picked out by a satanic cult to have the Antichrist. But I mean, like, it seems, actually it seems a bit more like like hostile, or something where you uncover some society of cannibals or something, where there's a community of people who are just that twisted. You know, they can hear a story about this and empower a young woman to go be a victim.
Empower a young woman to go and prey upon a young man and tell lies about him and destroy his life. That's how they empower women. I mean, that's feminism in a nutshell for you.
They
Empower women.
They empower women of zero moral fiber, negative moral fiber.
Oh no, Nick. I think they empower women. You know, any kind of women. It's just that women that have moral fiber don't choose to make use of the power that feminism gives them. You know, I mean, their moral fiber sees to that.
I stand corrected.
Well, no, feminism seeks to empower women straight across the board to do anything they want, pretty much if it'll damage men. The feminism does not empower women to do anything that would help men, or should go without saying, not to do anything that would compromise feminism. And this business of empowering women, it opens up a can of worms that it even is a can of worms for feminism. Because, of course, they can't get over the idea that feminist equals female or feminism equals women. They've got that so mixed up in their minds. They can't see around it. They can't see outside of that paradigm. It's like a mental defect they have. And at moments like these, I say, thank heaven I'm not a feminist. At least I've got my mind. It must be terrible to be a feminist, especially with the surrounding world getting angrier and angrier at you and closing in upon you. That's that mainstream anti-feminism thing again. It's happening, folks. And boy, it's about time. So, that was a very interesting article. I have saved that article. I have archived that article. It goes down in the historical record so that it won't go down the memory hole. And Nick, how is the noise factor from my end?
It's still there, but I can still hear you, so it's okay.
Okay, well, at least we're not spoiling the audio experience for anybody out there among our listeners. And it just stopped, so I guess we're okay for now. Hopefully it will go away totally here before too long. Boy, that article was a pretty tough act to follow. What do we got next here? This is from Spiked Online, Feminism and the Turn Against Enlightenment. Let me just pull that up in my browser. Oh, what happened here? Okay, I made a little blunder with the browser. Let me fix this. Okay, good. Here we go. From spikedonline.com. The title of this article is Feminism and the Turn Against Enlightenment. Now, I don't know much about Spiked Online, but I don't understand that they're necessarily the kind of publication that would publish something against feminism. Nick, do you know much about Spiked Online?
No idea. I mean, I've seen a thing here or there, but I can't.
Okay,
say
yeah, well,
formed an idea of what it's like and the profile of the publication.
Right. Yeah, it looks like we are in the same mind space there, vis-a-vis Spiked Online. All right. Feminism and the Turn Against Enlightenment. The new feminism is the gloss on the West's loss of faith in itself. Yep, loss of faith in yourself means self-doubt. It means you doubt yourself and somebody else can just jump in there and supply that doubt in some way or make up the deficit in some way, typically with something that is not to your benefit. One of the most striking things of the 21st century so far has been the rise of feminism. Well, I beg to differ. What about the 20th century? Didn't feminism rise in the 20th century? Are they pretending that feminism just came along in the 21st century? Sorry about that. I'm going to call Spiked Online out on that one. But yes, it continues to be striking into the 21st century. Now that we're 15 years into that century, no other movement enjoys as much political, cultural, and media validation right now as feminism does. Things have gone so far that when British PM David Cameron refused to pose in a t-shirt that said, "This is what a feminist looks like," he got flack. So entrenched is the new feminism. The new feminism, what's new about it? There's nothing new about it. So entrenched is the new feminism that now not being a feminist can land you in hot water. I think this is what attracted me to the article right away when I saw that last thing there. Not being a feminist can land you in hot water. Basically, we're looking for people who are willing to be landed in hot water and take the heat, in other words, by standing up and saying you're not a feminist. The problem is that when you stand up and say you're not a feminist, any move they make against you will be a move of aggression. When you say you're not a feminist, you don't say you're against feminism, you don't say you're anti-feminist, you just say you're not a feminist and just leave it there. They can only move against you with aggression and put themselves in the position or in the role of the aggressor. And this is a fact that we can maneuver to our advantage in future political undertakings. Just sharing that thought quickly. Let's go on with the article. The new feminism infuses political, cultural, and media life. The new feminism. It's not new. It's been doing that for a good number of years now. It's good business. Pop stars shake their booties in front of massive backdrops of the word feminist. Would that be Beyonce? Publishing houses fall over themselves to offer huge advances to feminists keen to write memoirs cum manifestos, a mix of sauciness and self-help with titles like Hot Feminist and Do It Like a Woman. These femi-manuals often top bestseller lists. New feminist blogs abound. Popular online mags like BuzzFeed and Vice promote new feminist ideas. Come on, what's new about it? The Twitterati push the new feminism too, and police deviations from it. Witness the arrest of those who are foul about new feminists. Arrest of those who are foul about new feminists. There's a link there. I have not followed that link. I'm going to have to do that. Foul about new. What does it mean to be foul about something? To have a foul attitude about something? I don't know. You can't open a newspaper without reading a feminist critique of the justice system, the internet, mainstream politics, movies. Oh my God. I mean, what they're describing here has been going on for years. It's not new. Culture is now judged by its willingness to adhere to the values of the new feminism. That's starting to gall me, really, seriously. From the outrage over the film version of Gone Girl, which was not new feminist enough, to the global applauding, well, maybe there is a new feminist. Maybe they're talking about something real that they perceive. To the global applauding of the rebooted Mad Max, which is apparently a feast of new feminist ideas, even art and entertainment must now accord with the new feminist outlook. You know, new feminist just means the current incarnation, the current stage to which feminism has evolved. And come back in 5 years, there'll be a new feminism. And come back 3 years after that, and there'll be a new feminism. And all they're describing with the phrase or with the word new feminist is the ongoing evolution of feminism, which is always in a certain direction, worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and the editions of FemSpeak are just going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Smaller and smaller, meaning more microscopic, more...
No, fewer words.
Oh, as in Newspeak, yes.
Newspeak is the only language that actually shrinks.
You know, I'm not sure that FemSpeak is necessarily going to shrink like Newspeak. I think FemSpeak might just expand, but it will expand within a very, very tightly constrained thought horizon. so that you will have a great multiplicity of words by which to express purely feminist ideas, but nothing outside of that intellectual gravity well.
Well, for every one word they come up with, like manspreading, they ban 10 more. Words like cunt or faggot or
Well, they're banning non-feminist, or rather, non-feminist language, non-fem speak, and once they've sufficiently eviscerated non-feminist language, then they will be free to expand the internal frontiers of fem speak, and so you will be awash in an ocean of new lexicology there, and it'll be a maze. It'll be harder and harder to find your way out of. Where is the exit door from all of this? That's the future scenario that I'm seeing when I look into my crystal ball. As for the world of politics, new feminism is dominant. There's that new. It's not new. It's not new. It's old. It's been going on for 40 years at least. Everyone might have laughed at the UK Labour Party's pink bus designed to get more women voting, but the idea that women do politics differently and better to men is now widely accepted. Maybe that's what's new about it. Maybe according to them it's widely accepted, and perhaps we are to believe that just a few years in the past it wasn't so widely accepted. Hillary Clinton has promised to make women's rights a key plank of her future dealings in the international sphere. UN bodies and NGOs already execute their global agendas in the language of the new feminism. No, they're not. They're doing their agendas in the same old feminist language as always, using terms like female empowerment. That's not new. Empowerment, that's been around for a long time, to promote population control measures and the policing of men in much of the global south. We've even had feminist wars. The occupation of Afghanistan was justified in part as a means of liberating women, with very little discussion of how it actually made Afghan women's lives worse. So in a very short period of time, feminism has gone from being viewed as the ideology of small groups of women to being the organizing principle of vast swathes of Western public life. Oh, baloney! It's been the organizing principle of vast swathes of Western public life for years. For years. It's just becoming more obvious now. More open, more in your face. Oh, lost my place here. Oh, here we go. Politics, media, culture, international relations, global conflict. No area has been left untouched by it. The rise of this new feminism in the West is strange for two reasons. Okay, what are those two reasons? The first is that all the other political movements of which feminism was once considered a close cousin have withered. Student radicalism of the progressive variety is a thing of the past. Have they heard of social justice warriors? Last I looked, the social justice warriors were going strong. Left-wing groups continue to shrink. No, maybe they are shrinking. Maybe they're just making more noise in their death throes. I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough yet. The anti-war movement is a shadow of its former self. You mean itself in the 1960s? Is that what they mean? And yet feminism, which in its modern form emerged around the same time as those movements, is soaring, finding favor with everyone from Beyonce to the possible next president of the U.S. And I guess they mean Hillary Clinton there. The second reason the rise of the new feminism is weird is because, in the West at least, feminism has never been less necessary. Thankfully, life for women... Getting noise again outside my window. Okay. Thankfully, life for women in the West has improved exponentially. There are now more women than men at university in Central Europe, in the EU, North America, and Latin America. In school, too, girls are outperforming boys. The OECD found that in developed countries, girls and boys are now equal in relation to science, and girls outperform boys in literacy. According to the OECD, the average gap between girls and boys is equivalent to an extra year of schooling. This leap forward for women in education is reflected in the Western labor market. In the UK, the gender pay gap is becoming history. I mean, it hasn't already become history. Women in their 20s now earn around 4% more than their male counterparts. These new levels of female independence have contributed to a decline in violence against women. Many women no longer have to stay put in situations that degrade them. Domestic violence rates in the UK are falling from a peak of more than 1 million incidents in 1993 to just under 400,000 in 2011/12. Very often, new feminist discourse, with its claim that Western women face daily horrors online and off, feels as detached from reality as it is possible to get. So, political radicalism is on the wane, and life for Western women has vastly improved, and yet feminism has become the most fashionable political position of our time. What's this all about? It has become fashionable in its own eyes, and yet there is a growth of people who are fed up to their back teeth with feminism. So we see two trends happening at the same time and converging toward a point of collision where we can possibly expect a crash and an explosion. In part, the new feminism can be seen as mission creep, an old movement looking for a new role that its original aims have largely been now that its original aims have largely been achieved. This would explain why it is so obsessed with culture, how people think and speak, and with what words they use or images they view. Okay, I'm going to say it again. What they're describing is not new. It's been going on for years. Having achieved equality in the legal and work spheres, some feminists are now moving into the realms of culture and even thought. Surprise, surprise, they're even moving into the realms of thought. When did they start doing this? Like a month ago?
Yeah, feminists have been policing my thoughts as far back as I can think. I remember.
I'm being sarcastic there in case anybody missed it. Even thought, whether politics or any politics for that matter, has no place. The end result is often intolerance, a demand not only that society remove all the barriers to women's engagement in public life, which is a good demand, but also that people and art and culture think about and depict women in a particular correct way, which is an illiberal demand. You know, this article, to me, it just sounds like they're telling us that water is wet. I mean, I'm glad that they're saying this, and I'm glad that these ideas are getting a platform and everything.
I'm not so glad.
You're not? Why not?
Well, when you go back to the beginning of the article, you know, they're saying, you know, they're talking about all this progress and how the wage gap is ending. I mean, these are all feminist talking points. This is someone pretending not to be a feminist.
Well, we don't know what their conscious motives are. To me, this sounds like a rather naive middle mass writer.
Possibly. I'm you know me. I'm less charitable than you or.
You're less charitable than me. Then you must be the boy. You must be the Ebenezer Scrooge to end all Ebenezer Scrooges. if I'm your benchmark for charitable, Nick,
well,
I never knew you.
in terms of seeing bad faith and willful malfeasance, anyway.
Well, I guess maybe where you and I differ on that point, Nick, is that yes, I see bad faith and malfeasance, you know, all over the place, but I don't assume that it's everywhere, that it's carpet saturated everywhere you look. I still think there's a lot of territory which is down to plain stupidity, with what the stupid person believes to be goodwill in their own minds.
Possibly. I mean, you know, you're right. If I had looked at, in order to take what I had to say when I first started getting into this stuff, then yeah, I probably would have paid. If I were to look back at myself now, look back at myself from now to about 2008, 2009, I would probably peg myself as a lily-livered, a lily-livered apologist as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, we shouldn't probably assume that the world has become as simple as you suggest, that everybody on one side is acting with malfeasance and bad faith. I mean, the world is complex enough, at least in my view, to still encompass useful idiocy and naivety. Okay, those forces are still at work upon the field of human nature. Yeah, I can't choose to think otherwise. Anyway, now that I lost my place in the article, in part, the new feminism can be seen as mission creep, an old movement looking for a new role now that its original aims have largely been achieved. Okay, I read that. Okay, got to the bottom of that paragraph. Women in a particular correct way. Demanding that people in art and culture think about and depict women in a particular correct way, which is an illiberal demand. In other words, kiss artistic freedom goodbye, kiss reality goodbye. I'd be interested to know what these new feminists think about Gustave Flaubert and his very famous novel, Madame Bovary, a depiction of women getting into the head of a female character, a man who got into the head of a female character. From what I'm told, very effectively. Even women have said this. I'd like to know what some of these new feminists think about Flaubert. Is he on their shit list? Because after all, Emma Bovary was not a very flattering character. Let's see, or feminists. There we go. Feminists themselves claim the new feminism is on the up because women in the West still live in a, quote, sea of misogyny, which is simply not true. Okay, well, the writer of the article is calling bullshit on misogyny, the misogyny trope. Men's rights activists, the saddest creatures in the political firmament. Okay, so now the writer shows his political colors. Well, thank goodness I'm not a men's rights activist, so I don't get to be the saddest creature in the political firmament, because after all, I mean, I don't want to be a sad creature. Claim the new feminism proves influential women are hell-bent on making life hard for blokes, which is also unconvincing and borders on a conspiracy theory. You know, people say conspiracy theory like it's a bad thing. I have no problem with conspiracy theories, other than the great majority of them are more or less wrong, because it's hard to formulate a correct conspiracy theory, given the amount of information that you need to gather, and given the falsification of information that's possible. But I cannot. Yeah.
I think that when they call it a conspiracy, I think that's. I mean, you know, the perfect response to that, I think, is that it's not conspiracy; it's orthodoxy. You know, orthodoxy. I mean, you have got all these people colluding, but they're hardly doing it in secret.
They're hardly doing it in secret, and they hardly even know that they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as
it's been normified to the point where it's what's on the menu, it's what's for dinner, and that's that.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory. No, the world is full of conspiracies. Human beings are conspiratorial animals. Let's not kid ourselves. Human beings conspire all the time. My evidence is that I have been involved in a conspiracy or two myself in my day. Okay? Human beings love to conspire. The only problem is that conspiracies by their nature are secret or secretive, and those on the outside are likely to get a wrong picture of what's really happening, as was intended from the inside. Let's see, how have these new feminists become so influential? What is it about society, rather than the new feminists themselves, which has seen new feminist ideas being so fulsomely embraced by officialdom and elites? Well, we could offer theories about that, but it's a bit beyond the scope of the talk right now. The issue is not the apparently terrifying influence of new feminists, but the receptiveness to their arguments and prejudices among those who oversee political, public, and media life in the 21st century. Yes, there we go. The receptiveness to their arguments and prejudices, that very same receptiveness is a measure, is a manifestation of the extent to which our whole culture has become saturated and imbued with feminism. The receptiveness is there because feminism has become normified in the culture as a whole over the last half century, to the point where further injections of feminism are just sucked up like a sponge, as a sponge would suck them up. You know, you're adding feminism on top of feminism, and feminism reaches out eagerly to embrace more feminism. That, as briefly as I can put it off the top of my head, is what explains this. And the article goes on. My view is that this new feminism is best understood not as a fresh uprising or an independent movement, but as the gloss on Western society's own collapse of faith in itself. Okay. Well, they're finally, the writer is getting a glimmering of what's happening when he says it's not a fresh uprising or an independent movement. It's not. It's not fresh. It's very, very stale. It's past its shelf life, so nothing fresh about that. What we are witnessing is not the rise of a new ideology or any kind of grassroots upheaval. No, I agree, we're not. But the instinctive formulation of a cover, an explanation for the modern West's abandonment of the ideas of reason, order, autonomy, and truth, and of the Enlightenment itself. This sounds like something that one of the saddest creatures in the political firmament might say. That last little paragraph that I just read sounds like something a men's rights activist would say. This writer is sounding like a men's rights activist, or at least many that I've known.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that whole when he's saying saying that the men's rights activists are the saddest people, and they think that feminism is a giant conspiracy, and then turning around and calling bullshit on feminism. I don't know what to say.
The writer of this article is just not very smart. It hasn't done his homework. It's just not as smart and cutting edge as you and me, Nick. I mean, this is the Vanguard Report, and that name is for a reason. I mean, we are on the Vanguard, okay? And I think we can pat ourselves on the back without straining ourselves unduly. The new feminism, with its calling into question of what one feminist author refers to as reason's diktat of the apparently male belief that the world is knowable and changeable. Question of what feminist refers to as reason's diktat. Calling into question this reason's diktat, this apparently male belief, has risen to the surface of public debate, not because of its newness or profundity, but because it is currently the best lick of paint that can be added to the West's own jettisoning of its own values. This isn't women versus men. I agree, it's not women versus men. I'm agreeing with the writer here. It isn't even feminist versus the authorities. No, it's not feminist versus the authorities, because feminists are the authorities. Doesn't he get it? No. The new feminism is simply the external expression of the internal corrosion of Western values. Well, feminism is an external expression of the internal corrosion of Western values. There is a lot of truth in that statement. The acceptable face of what I think we should view as the unacceptable decommissioning of the ideas that created the modern democratic world. As such, it is bad for both men and women. Now, this writer, my God, what... I scarcely know what to say here. I find myself agreeing with this writer about half the time, and the other half I want to just grab him by the hair and twirl him around, you know, to whip some sense into him. This guy just doesn't know what's going on. I mean, to put it uncharitably, this writer has his head up his ass. Anyway. Oh, it's a long article. War on the Male Enlightenment. Too many discussions of the new feminism take it at face value that this global phenomenon, this political pop and publishing sensation, is just another wave of feminism. Here we go. Like, for example, our discussion. Yeah, we think it's just another wave of feminism. I think it's just another wave of feminism. Finally, the writer is saying something interesting here. People wonder if it's the heir to second or third wave feminism, whether it is too influenced by the Dworkinite anti-sex feminism of the 1980s and not enough by the more liberal feminism of the 1960s thinkers and later feminists like Camille Paglia. Whether it echoes the prohibition feminism of some of the early suffragettes, and whether it might do better to look to the more autonomous feminism of female explorers in the 1920s or radicals like Germaine Greer in the 1970s. It's undoubtedly true that all these earlier feminisms have impacted on the current discussion. Oh, you bet they have. And of course, as feminist writers never tire of telling us, there is no one feminism. Yes, feminist writers never tire of telling us that there is no one feminism. And that is true on the surface, but you go more than 3 inches below the surface, and it's no longer true. There really is, deep at the heart, deep at the core, only one feminism, and it only leads in one direction. And we'll talk about that some other time. Even today, when the consensus around feminism can feel suffocating, wear the t-shirt or else, there are differences of opinion. Choice feminists, especially in the U.S., are doing a good job of standing up to the illiberal outlook of campus and broadsheet feminists who think nothing of no platforming those who do not bow before the new feminism, or describing as problematic and possibly ban-worthy every piece of culture that is not sufficiently new feminist. And yet there is something very new today. The new feminism is not merely a continuation of debates that have been raging for years. It's the closest thing we currently have to a ruling class ideology. Bing, 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 bing. It's the closest thing we currently have to a ruling class ideology. I would take that an inch further and say it is the ruling class ideology. At least the cultural ruling class. It has become the moral and political glue of the fractured post-political elites of the West, a means for otherwise cut-off institutions both to promote a particular moral image of themselves and to interfere in more areas of life, thought, and speech in a seemingly progressive way. The most fascinating thing about the new feminism is not the thing itself, but its impact, especially among the West's ruling classes who have embraced it. There you go. I couldn't agree more. The West's ruling classes have embraced feminism. Unlike all the feminisms that went before, the new feminism represents not an external strike against the political system, but rather an internal outlook through which the elites hope to create a new political narrative and expand their influence in public and private life. Well, the new political narrative is new maybe against the entire backdrop of history, but if you take a more recent frame of time, it's not so new. I mean, it's been around for decades at least. It's not new as in 6 months old, if that's what the writer means. But yes, it is a new political narrative meant to be expanded in its influence in public and private life. The new feminism is strikingly concerned with exposing what it and the political and cultural elites more broadly views as the folly of, quote, male ideas and the limits to enlightened thinking. This is spelled out explicitly by Jacqueline Rose, author of Women in Dark Times. Feminism, she says, should alert us to the world's unreason. For too long, says Rose, we have believed that the so-called reason or enlightenment of our modern world can deliver progress and liberate humanity. It's a story of light triumphing over darkness, she says, and it's outdated. Okay, well, This Jacqueline Rose can put her money where her mouth is. If she is to be the torchbearer of light, let's see it, Jacqueline. Put it up, Jacqueline. Where is your light? What we need now is a political outlook which confronts dark with dark. Rose says the great thing about the new feminism is that it can intervene in that murky, not easily graspable place somewhere between biology and culture, a place of unreason that runs through the world. This notion of confronting dark with dark. Nick, do you have any thoughts about that?
Are they, sounds
It's
like,
it's a dark saying. I'm seeing that through a glass darkly.
yeah, it sounds like, fighting evil with evil.
Fighting fire with fire.
Or using, well, if they say they're fighting dark with dark, and this is a feminist saying this?
Yes, a
That
feminist.
something great about feminism is fighting dark with dark, then it means that, yeah, it sounds to, well, I can't say for sure that it means one thing or another, but it really sounds to me like someone is justifying to themselves the
whatever dastardly thing they have in mind.
Yeah, the use of really something really awful.
Something really underhanded, really sneaky.
But it's okay because they're up against something underhanded.
Something equally dark. Well, yeah, I guess that's fair enough. The problem is, once you start down that road, it's a slippery slope. You release that particular demon from the bottle to do a job for you, and the demon is now free to go to work for anybody out there, even your enemies. Now, if we are to fight dark with dark or fight evil with evil, then other people are going to come back and fight us with more evil, and we will get an evil world. This reminds me of the old saying that the devil's greatest trick was to convince us that he doesn't exist. Somehow that pops into my brain.
The world. Yeah.
That he doesn't
exist. I can see how that would come up, but I can't exactly articulate.
This is hard to articulate, and I think it is intentionally so. I think it is meant to confuse us, and it's meant to basically blow smoke or to squirt squid ink into the water to obscure things. I mean, darkness is obscurity, after all, and that makes perfect sense. Boy, this is a long article. Am I going to have time to read the entire thing? Let's see how long it is. It goes on and on and on and on, and you know what? Looks like I've so far read maybe 2/3 of it, and I'm going to cut it short here because I want to move on to some other things in the program. But people, you've got it there on your link list. This is Q number 2. It's interesting. You might find it worth your while to really drill down into it, and if that's the case, there it is, Q number 2 on your Q list. And have a look if you're so inclined. And we are halfway through the 2 hours. Boy, that 1 hour just melted away like a snow cone in front of a blowtorch, didn't it? Anyway, as you all know, anti-feminism is going mainstream. Mainstream anti-feminism is a thing. We have seen the signs. The woods are full of people now who don't like feminism for one reason or another, and new recruits are arriving daily. New blood with new ideas or new approaches to old ideas, but either way, new blood. As you might expect, this is reflected in the online world. But the question that shall occupy us today concerns the offline world. Nobody literally lives on the internet inside those wires. The names you see on your screen are attached to physical bodies that sit behind other screens halfway around the world or halfway across your city. But either way, there is a biological reality which underlies all of this. In the beginning, we were typing messages at each other on Usenet and places like that. Time passed, And we started linking up by email, at first sporadically. From there, we graduated to online voice chat and then to Skype. And then some of us even started looking at each other across tables over cappuccinos or pitchers of microbrew. Reality in all of its dimensions. Yeah, that's as real gets. All right, so we're fanning out into the real world, going eyeball to eyeball. But as I said originally, we are also growing in number. So we ought to pack those two things together into the same pipe. Don't you think so? I mean, it's only natural and logical. We aim to challenge the feminist hegemony. By that I mean the nearly total feminist domination over our society, both culturally and institutionally. Hegemony, preponderant influence or authority over others, the social, cultural, ideological, or economic influence exerted by a dominant group. Feminism is hegemonic. That is a simple statement, but we need to think about it. Really think about it. Everything starts there and unrolls from there. And if we are to reverse feminism, we are to roll all of that in reverse. Feminism is hegemonic. Feminist domination of our thoughts, feelings, language, institutions, the entire fabric of our life has cemented itself into place radically over the last half century. It was a lot of work, and I think it will take a proportional amount of work to undo what has been done. Our job is to challenge the feminist hegemony in every way we can devise. We know that feminism has established itself upon a foundation of lies, both large and small, that were established early and repeated endlessly until they saturated the cultural fabric and drowned out every other voice. Most people literally haven't got the necessary mind stuff to think against feminism anymore, because our entire cultural thought space is defined by feminism in the first place, forming a self-validating intellectual gravity well which permits no escape. People can't think against feminism because they can't think outside feminism. You got to begin at the outside. You can't start within feminism and think your way out of feminism. You have to make one clear, clean quantum jump and immediately place yourself outside of feminism, outside of the total paradigm, the total frame of reference. But people can't think against feminism because, as I said, they can't think outside of feminism. Despite that, a few of us have managed to escape because we have hung on to our original minds and native perceptions. Plus, we've made that quantum jump that I mentioned. As strict anti-feminists, we understand that this is mainly I say, a war of propaganda and public rhetoric. It is a contest to sway hearts and minds, but mainly to break mental shackles, to rip off blindfolds, to let people know that they are not alone. That last point is important. Skype is dandy, but there's nothing quite like eyeball to eyeball to know that you are not alone. Feminism has no sovereign cultural authority. It is a usurper. Its hegemony is to be forfeited. Did you catch that? Feminism is a usurper. It has no sovereign cultural authority, and its hegemony is to be forfeited. And that forfeiture begins right now, right this very second, even as I speak and even as you listen. Let others speak of men's rights and bemoan the male condition. Let others open men's shelters and men's centers. That is their work, and we salute their work. But our work is nothing more than to turn the popular mind against feminism in its entirety, not by talking about men's rights, but by proclaiming feminism's wrongs. And you know the nice thing about proclaiming feminism's wrongs, even if you don't talk about men's rights, well, look at feminism's wrongs, and most of them just very conveniently happen to be wrongs against men. So talk about feminism's wrongs and you got men's rights covered, because feminism's wrongs are mostly, very largely, transgressions against men's rights. But talking about men's rights is a slow political starter. We really need to shift the conversation more toward feminism's wrongs than men's rights.
Yeah, I think Christina Hoff Sommers said it the best when she said that it's not. She doesn't think of what she does as standing up for men. She thinks of it as standing up for the truth. And right now we are drowning in our own truths about gender. And
we're drowning in the feminist narrative.
Yeah, I completely agree with what she said there, because I don't like the idea of speaking quote unquote as a man.
You're talking about this would be a good place to put in. You're talking about the androcentric narrative voice.
Yeah, I mean, when if someone is a man and they feel slighted, quote as a man, that's they're entirely welcome to express that frustration. But
it makes for weak politics, though, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and because as John the Other has pointed out, there he's saying now that before he used to when he used to be an MRA, but he's not an MRA anymore because he doesn't think that there is any he doesn't think that there's sympathy there for men, and he's right about that. So I mean, for me anyway, speaking as I've never been interested in speaking as a member of an oppressed class. So I've never argued that men are oppressed. I've simply left it at they don't have it better.
I think there is a case to be made that men are oppressed, as long as feminism is saying that women are oppressed. I see it as simply projection of the fact that feminism actively seeks to oppress men.
Yeah, but again, I have strategic reasons for not complaining about men as being oppressed. Again, if somebody else
or not theorizing oppression of men as a class, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody else wants to complain about that, I mean, oppression is something to complain about. Absolutely. But how far is it going to get you?
Well, politically, in the grand scheme of things, in the great game, which is what we need to be looking at, it's going to be a very slow starter. It's going to get you about 1 inch every 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make progress that way, but I think it's a much wiser plan now to trim our sails to this new wind of mainstream anti-feminism.
I agree.
Exhibiting the stupidity of feminism, painting it in big, bright, garish colors, and shoving it in the face of the world. Because people are waking up to that, yes.
Speaking of which, if anybody here has yet to see Lauren Southern at this year's Slutwalk in Vancouver, I suggest look it up on Rebel Media, the YouTube, the Rebel Media YouTube channel. It is great.
Yeah, I think if you typed Lauren Southern, Slutwalk, that would probably pull it up for you in the YouTube search engine. Yes, definitely. Lauren Southern is a person to keep your eye upon, a person whom we will be hearing more of in the future. I can just about guarantee that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, she was on AVFM with Paul yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like she may or may not be coming on the Vanguard Report with us. I've heard some murmurs that she's going to be
Oh,
on.
Nick, you didn't have to let that cat out of the bag so soon, did you?
Said may or may not. I don't know yet.
Okay.
But yeah, she is definitely she's the most recent sweetheart of the men's rights movement. That's for sure.
Well, I would hesitate to use that kind of terminology, but yeah, she definitely. I mean, she knows where it's at vis-a-vis feminism. And well, what she did there at the slut walk, boy, that was something. So everybody should go and look at that video. Lauren Southern at the slut walk. I believe that was in Vancouver. Is that right? Hello, Nick. Are you there?
Yes, yes, yeah. It was. Sorry, I leave my microphone muted, and then it takes me a couple seconds to get around to it. Yes, it was in Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I looked at that video. It didn't look like there was a huge turnout for this slut walk. I mean, from what I could see in the picture frame, it's like maybe there were a couple of dozen people there. Well, I don't know.
Well, whether there were or not, I mean, there were plenty of people at the 2013 Edmonton Slut Walk and plenty of people at the 2014 Edmonton Slut Walk. And I can imagine that a city like Vancouver, which is so much more densely populated and so much
Yeah.
more
Yeah,
left
they must have
wing.
had a big slut walk in Vancouver. I didn't get that impression by looking at the video. And there was just a relative handful of people in the picture. Anyway, but everybody do watch that video. By the way, Lauren has gotten, I think, somewhere approaching 1 million, if I'm not mistaken, 1 million responses, much of it hate mail. I mean, when you get tons and tons and tons of hate mail from feminists, you know you've touched a nerve.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. If you watch her video, they're telling people in her private life that she's a pedophile, among other things.
Oh, they've come up
That's
with all kinds of wild stuff, and they're making themselves look worse than pedophiles. You know.
well, yeah. I mean, they're making themselves look pretty bad, and this is what they did with Phil Mason too, Thunderfoot. Right? People are sending. They're like the thing is before he was taking on feminism, he was opposed to he was very critical of Islam, and he still is obviously, but his videos are critical of Islam, and a bunch of Muslims, they photoshopped his face into gay porn and did all kinds of things. And sent messages to his bosses and trying to get him kicked out of the university that he taught at, and then
But what are the feminist? What has been the feminist response to Thunderfoot?
well, they've done the same thing. I was just about to say that they've done the same things as these Muslims did. Is they sent a bunch of slanderous communications to his bosses, trying to get him fired, and all that. And like the same thing with this Lauren Southern thing, and all that ends up happening every time is the people who get these messages go, "Wow, what a bunch of whack jobs! I had no idea."
Okay, and these same whack jobs have the nerve to kick up a storm about what non-feminist people do. Non-feminist members of the general public do to feminists who get out of line, and then there's the whole Gamergate thing. I mean, pot, meat, kettle. Almost everything they say to me sounds like projection, and the more I listen to what they say, and the more I study the world, and the more I study the context in which all of this is happening, the more it dawns upon me that projection is their middle name. That's what they're all about, projection.
Have you heard of Sargon's Law?
I've heard it somewhere. Can you refresh my mind on that?
It's whenever I think it may have been redacted to whenever an ideologue makes an accusation, but it might be a social justice warrior or a feminist. But whenever these people make an accusation, it is invariably true of themselves.
Oh, well, that's exactly what I just said. Then it's projection.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
I mean, if anybody here ever listens to what used to be called Going Mental with Paul and Tara, or now it's now called Say Goodbye to Crazy.
mhm.
Uh, they talk about what is called DARVO, deny and reverse,
Deny, attack, reverse, victim. What is the
order.
order? Reverse victim order. Right.
Yeah. Um,
Basically, Darvo is projection.
yeah, yeah. People will accuse you of whatever it is they're doing.
Nick, you're getting a lot of background noise there, but just to make you aware.
Yeah, I'm muting my microphone.
Anyway, speaking of Darvo, the thought that I've had from time to time is that feminism, as a whole, is political Darvo. And political Darvo is what they practice constantly against anybody who opposes them. If you're not a feminist, well, they're out to get you. They're not content to just leave you alone with your non-feminist thoughts and feelings, to live your non-feminist life. They want to get in there and control your life. And all you got to do to arouse their wrath is to quietly say, "I'm not a feminist." Just say, "I'm not a feminist." They will hate you for it. And the more you say it, the more they'll hate you. So heads up. Oh, well. Feminist domination of our thoughts, feelings, language, institutions, the entire fabric of our life has cemented itself into place radically over the last half-century. It was a lot of work, and I think it will take a proportional amount of work to undo what has been done. We just got to get in there and dig in and reverse what they have done. And to do that, we study it to a T. We study it to a hilt. Our job is to challenge the feminist hegemony in every way we can devise. We know that feminism has established itself upon a foundation of lies, both large and small, that were established early and repeated endlessly until they saturated the cultural fabric and drowned out every other voice. As strict anti-feminists, we understand that this is mainly I say, a war of propaganda and public rhetoric. It is a contest to sway hearts and minds, but mainly to break mental shackles, to rip off blindfolds, to let people know that they are not alone. Let others speak of men's rights and bemoan the male condition. Let others open men's shelters and men's centers. That is their work, and we salute their work. But our work is nothing more than to turn the popular mind against feminism in its entirety, not by talking about men's rights, but by proclaiming feminism's wrongs. And I think that's where we left off when we started talking. We aim not only to turn the popular mind against feminism, but to train and direct that mind in a manner that will make it politically effective against the feminist power structure in the long run. Briefly, organization built upon theory and praxis. Feminism is to come under fire all across the cultural map in every possible community or theater of operation. We aim to undermine, to the point of collapse, the entire feminist worldview. Nothing less than that. We don't want to argue with feminism. We know what a fruitless endeavor that is. We just want to bring about the structural collapse of feminism as a cultural construct, as a worldview. And we have a number of means at our disposal by which to accomplish that. After we have done this, the dismantled rubble of feminism may be swept to the wayside of history where it rightfully belongs, on the scrap mound of bad ideas gone disastrously wrong. Our task, putting it briefly, is to spread counter-feminist information anywhere and everywhere, either directly challenging feminism by name or indirectly undermining its intellectual foundations. Either way, the purpose is to bring about the social death of feminism through the collapse of the feminist narrative, a condition where one and all can openly mock feminism, and nobody apart from a shrinking number of diehards will admit that they ever had anything to do with feminism in the first place. Our task, to state it more simply, is to establish a counter-feminist culture of critique. Culture of critique. A culture of critique that will pervade all social spaces. Plain and simple folk will mock feminism crudely, while erudite academics and intellectuals will do the job more urbanely. But either way, feminism will collapse into rubble and ultimately be swept from the road of history. Remember the phrase, culture of critique. You'll be hearing it again, and you will be saying it yourself. Or if not, you will be putting it into practice in one form or another. What counts here is the underlying reality and the riptide of history. Culture of critique. We recommend that you form local groups with like-minded people and get to work in any way that might occur to you. If you're isolated, consider yourself a group of one. That's just fine. There is nothing quite like making contact with kindred spirits. At first, you might have no idea what to do other than to talk. Well, all right then, talk. That is a time-honored tradition in the craft of revolution. There is typically a lot of talking at first. It is a stage before things get more active. So, form a study circle and meet regularly to review what you have learned and to discuss current events. Remember, they also serve who only stand and wait. Eventually, you will think of a way to extend the boundaries of your conversation into the world at large, whether the world is aware of your existence or not. The message is that feminism is crap. Your job is to instill that idea into other people. But while you are doing that, your other job is to network and to build increasingly widespread social infrastructure. The simple task of building social infrastructure is revolutionary in and of itself. When the big assault begins, you will want to have your grid in place so that you can make things happen in a big way. Get the coordination thing going on, you know. At the same time, you are building up the social fabric of the post-feminist world, because what you do now will continue in business after feminism has been disabled and form the basis for the future. So, spread the red dye, grow the culture of critique, and build the social infrastructure for the post-feminist future. We shall revisit this subject in the future and drill more deeply into it.
Well, can I drill more deeply into it right now, or do we have time?
By all means, Nick, drill more deeply into it.
Yeah, what Feeble just described there was pretty much what I did with Men's Rights Edmonton. When I started it, I had no idea that I would. Pardon?
I said I thought you would approve.
Pardon, Feeble?
I said I
Yeah.
thought you would approve.
When I started, yes, I got you. When I started, when I started Men's Rights Edmonton, I didn't know that there was going to be anybody else in Edmonton who was anti-feminist or into the men's rights movement. I just knew that I could advertise it on A Voice for Men. Um, so when I first started the website, mensrightsedmonton.com, it was just basically an electronic flyer with a couple of with each page dedicated to an issue like circumcision or domestic violence, and it would have about 2 or 3 paragraphs on each issue, just to make it clear where I stood, and a contact us button. And having, of course, a name, a handle like mensrightsedmonton.com. It's 3 words. It sticks in your mind, and it lets you know exactly who we are and what we're about and where we are too. And when we first started meeting, we were doing. I was going off of John Hembling's suggestion and his practice. In fact, I went out to see how he ran Vancouver MRA. And what they would do is they would meet up every Saturday at a restaurant, and they would eat their food and shoot the shit, and then they would go out and put up posters. So they would have a social meeting and then go out and do activism. Now, obviously, that's not set in stone. You don't have to do that yourself. I would call for meetings of people who would show up. And retrospectively, I'm pretty sure our first couple of meetings were half spies, half feminist spies. But I kind of had my suspicions, but I didn't mind because because
it was
having asses in seats.
Chance to feed them whatever you wanted to feed them.
A chance to feed them whatever I wanted to feed them, and having asses in seats, even if they are spies. It gives the impression to anyone who's genuinely showing up at this meeting that you've got something going. People might get discouraged if they show up and there's nobody else there. So even if people are spies, they can be used to your advantage.
Yeah, that's good when you have spies showing up. I mean, you need to know, develop your spy radar. Anyway, so and you do that by practice.
Yeah, you can generally. I mean, it might sound kind of arrogant, but I think you can effectively vet on the basis of intellect. Really, like I mean, like take the example of the guy who showed up to the Men's Rights Sydney meeting, and then published an article about how he infiltrated.
I remember that article. Yeah.
And I mean, the article that they wrote in response was like
he was patting himself on the back as being a very clever fellow there, wasn't he?
And it was very obvious to all the people at the meeting that he was a plant.
Because he was the only one wearing a fedora. That's how they spot this. If anybody shows up to a men's rights meeting wearing a fedora, that person is the feminist.
I might show up wearing a fedora or possibly a trilby.
I don't like fedoras. I actually once was in a store where they had some fedoras, and I tried putting one on my head, just for fun in front of the mirror. I don't know. It didn't make it for me. I'm not a fedora person.
And but yeah, so yeah, having a basic website with an easy to remember address like Men's Rights Edmonton, and having a like I said, having a website that very clearly states your positions, and then broadcasting that website however you can. And so you've got the website is your basis of getting connected with people. Broadcasting that message is how people find out about the website, and then once people have gotten in touch with you, then you can start having meetings and introducing people to each other and forming communities, forming real space communities. And that is very important because, as we've just seen with Reddit recently took down the story that Peter Logan was talking about earlier, where the man was had a sex act enacted upon him while he was asleep, or blacked out rather, and then that was actually taken down from Reddit recently. So between Reddit and Women Action in Media and their behavior on Twitter and Facebook and everything else, the internet is an amazing tool for us getting our message out there. But if that tool, sorry, I have dogs playing here, but that tool can be mitigated, it can be screwed around with. So we have to take this offline and make this a real cultural thing where you can actually meet people in your city that you can relate to on these things. Because another reason for this is if you start going out there and become as public as I have, then your support network will dwindle. People will turn on you. People will they'll turn their back on you.
Well, basically, you'll find out
will be right out to get you.
You'll find out who your real friends are.
Yep, that is definitely true for me. I was hanging out with some social justice warriors right when I got into this, and boy.
And surprise, surprise, the social justice warriors ostracized you.
Well, they didn't just ostracize me. They
attacked you.
They kept me out of the loop. They lied about me. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That's what happens if you're not a feminist and you become too high profile about that. You can expect this. But the more people do it, the harder it will be for them to retaliate. Finally, to the point where it reaches a tipping point, a critical mass, a snowball point, I guess you'd call it, and then they can't do anything about it. But it's always hard to be the first one to put yourself out there. It's always hard to be the pioneer.
But it's you get a good feeling from it. I have to admit, feels
like you're living life to the fullest with some sense of purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes life seem like an adventure. Well, so we got looks like 25 minutes left in our 2-hour time slot here on the Vanguard Report, episode number 52. If you just came in just now, this is the Vanguard Report, episode 52. I am Fiedelbogen. With me is Nick Redding, man of Canada, true son of the Alberta Prairie. Let's go on to another item here to talk about. This is Q number 3 on your Q list. And if you're catching this on YouTube, just look in the low bar and you'll see all of that stuff lined up. So, Q number 3. This is from The Spectator in the UK. That would be the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, otherwise known as England. Let me pull this up in my browser. Here we go. The Spectator. This was interesting. The action at Oxford University. And I got a problem here. I got the wrong link. I got the wrong link up in my browser. I'm going to have to reload the link, but I got the correct link right in front of me here. So give me a second to pop that into my address bar on my browser and give it a second to load. Here we go. The Spectator, Oxford's new feminist hit squad. You want to know how bad feminism can get, how bad feminist behavior can get? This is from Oxford, the city of dreaming spires, home of Oxford University, one of the most famous universities on planet Earth. It's been around since, I don't know, 1200, since the Middle Ages. Doesn't like an Oxford education. So here's some light on the present day Oxford experience. And this was written by, who wrote this? Damian Thompson, whoever that is. We're at the tail end of Trinity term at Oxford when the university finally begins to look like the city of dreaming spires depicted in the postcards. The dismal weather cheers up. The quadrangles are soaked in sunlight, and the students, just about to leave for the summer, grab those precious few weeks to do Oxfordy things like punting and slurping at Pimm's. Even the swats and the lefties are filled with the spirit of Brideshead. Parties spring up on every available lawn. The chatter of gossip and teasing grows louder and louder until the sun goes down. People start throwing up, and the college authorities herd the revelers onto the street. Sounds like a lot of fun. Throwing up. But this year, a group of undergraduates, mostly women, will be shunning all of this. They will be staying in their college rooms, fingers flying across their keyboards as they scowl at the screen. They are the hardcore of a feminist cult that has gripped Oxford and makes life miserable for hundreds of undergraduates across the university. The cult uses Facebook to snoop on students who aren't, quote-unquote, proper feminists. It tries to force young women to use its extreme rhetoric and denounces them if they don't. Well, this is all very much in a pattern. What they're describing here at Oxford is similar to things happening everywhere. Sounds like that new feminism that the guy was talking about in the other article. Its digital tirades can poison college life. One young woman told me that new friends she'd made at Oxford suddenly shunned her in the dining hall after the word went out that she held incorrect views on women's rights. I think what would get you into that doghouse faster than anything is to stand up and say, I am not a feminist. Okay, let's not belabor the obvious there. She was so worried about repercussions that she asked me not to mention which area of women's rights she felt strongly about. I'm going to call the cult country living. That's not quite accurate. It's actually spelled without the O, a gynecological pun that's the only evidence of a sense of humor you'll find among its leaders. Except I don't think that the leaders of that cult were doing that out of any kind of humor. I think they were doing it in grim, sour-faced seriousness. Kind of like spelling women with a Y instead of an E. Yeah, that sort of thing. I reckon calling it country living will make them cross, which, to be fair, is not difficult. These lasses are very, very cross all the time. If there was an Oxford Blue for taking offense, they'd be champions. Country living is an internet cult that polices behavior both online and offline. Its manifesto can be read by anyone who visits its page on the blogging platform Tumblr, which is mocked up to look like a 1970s student magazine. Here we learn that anyone can become a C-word, which is a badge of honor, not a term of abuse. Those 4 letters have been reclaimed by the group. Like feminists everywhere, country living does a lot of reclaiming. But to earn this honor, you must pass tests as severe as the binge drinking initiation rituals of an all-male Oxford dining society. You must promise to accept that gender is a social construction. I got it. Excuse me, I got a problem here with my browser. Bear with me here, bear with me. I'm getting some unwanted audio into my headset here, and I don't know where it's coming from, and it's making it really hard for me to read the article and to focus on it.
Would you like me to take over for you?
Wait a minute. I think I've tracked down the culprit here. It's an ad on this page, and I hate when this happens. How do you turn this thing off? Pause.
The best I can say is...
Hold on, hold on.
Okay.
I got it. I got it. I killed it. I killed it. You know, what I really hate is when you've got like 18 tabs open on your browser, and some audio starts kicking up, and you don't know which of the 18 tabs it's on, and you got to hunt through all of them to find it. That really wrecks my game.
Yeah.
Okay, we've had our little laugh. Where was I? Okay, but to earn this honor, you must pass tests as severe as the binge drinking initiation rituals of an all-male Oxford dining society. You must promise to accept that gender is a social construction and embrace its fluidity. You must recognize your place and privilege within intersectionality. And if you fail to do these things, Country Living wants to know. It has spies all over Oxford. They're not necessarily members of the group, as with many religious cults, it's not clear who is and isn't a member, and fellow travelers are often the most snoopy zealots. A student can be chatting with friends in the Missing Bean, an espresso bar in quaint Turtle Street, and say something problematic, the Country Living buzzword, meaning anything that deviates from its rigid feminist doctrine, obsessed with transsexual rights. The country ladies are ferocious earwiggers, and if the student is on the cult's radar, the remark will find its way back to headquarters, which bizarrely is not an office but a Facebook group. Now see what they're doing here? They have set up a totalitarian system, a totalitarian government, if you will, in embryonic form. And when people like this get power in a big way, not just on a college campus, but when they gain power at high levels of government, then you're going to see the same behavior translated onto a large scale affecting millions of people. Okay? Not for nothing do we call them feminazis. Okay? Although you could call them femi-Bolsheviks, I suppose that would work equally well. This is where Country Living rules on the correct ideological approach to any current issue. Its Facebook pages are designated as a safe space for feminists. How about a safe space for the rest of the world, safe from feminism? That's the kind of safe space I'd like to see. Meaning an unsafe space for anyone who deviates from the line. Now, there you go. As with many sectarian outfits, the smaller the deviation, the bigger the hissy fit. The ultimate crime is not being a Tory man, but being the wrong sort of feminist, explains one woman student who, like everyone I talked to, asked not to be named. Yeah, that's a definite advantage if you're not part of their group and you make it clear that they're not part of your that you're not part of their group. There is a limit on what they can do to you. You place yourself most within their power and most within their reach when you're one of them. When you make it clear that you're not one of them, that gives you a considerable degree of immunity, because you're not dependent upon their group as your social support network, and they cannot play upon your fear of losing a social support network that was not your social support network in the first place. You see how that works? The ultimate crime is not being a Tory man, but being the wrong sort of feminist, explains one woman student who, like everyone I talked to, asked not to be named. The country set love shutting down debates on their pages. Just after the general election, whose result came as a nasty shock to them, their Facebook administrator, Shana Yang, announced that I can't allow these discussions about the Tory victory to continue until we release a clarified statement of what CL rules say is okay and isn't okay on this topic. No wonder that, according to a survey by the Oxford Tab newspaper, a third of country living Facebook members were too nervous to post in the group. The country set love shutting down debates on their pages. Oh, wait a minute, I just read that paragraph. Such nervousness isn't confined to Facebook. The influence of CL goes way beyond its membership, said one male undergraduate. Girls who come up to Oxford as mild feminists pick up the message that they have to take offense at anything that might be considered misogynistic. So boys have to monitor their own language, pretend to be worked up about trans issues. You know, that's the worst part right there. It's not just not saying things or not saying the wrong things, but not saying the right things. You know, that takes it to the next level. Failing to say the right things proactively apparently now can get you in trouble. Boys have to monitor their own language, pretend to be worked up about trans issues if they're to stand any chance of getting laid. Okay. Something similar happened during the early 70s heyday of old-style feminism, when guys would denounce patriarchy in order to get laid, but they didn't have an internet Stasi to worry about. Adds another student. You see members of the college rugby club glancing around anxiously to see if there are any women present before they can tell a joke. Ironically, they're the ones who need a safe space. I asked him how he could tell the difference between country's core. Weirdly dyed hair is one clue, he says, but a better one is problematic. The hardcore inserted into practically every sentence. And I'm going to insert something right here. I like the word problematic. I use that word myself, and I plan to continue using it. And especially I'm going to use it when I'm talking to feminists and people like that, because I find most of what feminist has to say and what feminists have to say very deeply problematic. Good word, problematic. You don't have to be a feminist or a social justice warrior to use that word. All this is Oxford at its worst. The university has always been a playground for egomaniacs and control freaks, unlike milder, more studious Cambridge. Although there are country members in other universities, its origins are no accident. We insist that grammar and spelling are elitist and don't matter because of 100 years of linguistic study showing that. Yeah, have you ever noticed how many feminists don't like punctuation? They hate to insert anything like a comma in their sentences, and they don't like to put periods at the ends of their sentences.
And they don't like having their writing style restrained by like sanity or
making sense,
or yeah,
being comprehensible to the other person, which punctuation correctly used can help with quite a bit.
They expect you to know what they're talking about. They expect you to just know what they're talking about because they have no fucking idea.
Yeah, you have to feel it.
Yeah.
Well, really what they're doing is controlling you, but that's another discussion. But, okay, we insist that grammar and spelling are elitist and don't matter because of 100 years of linguistic study showing that. When people who insist on hyper-patriotism get language wrong, we use the errors in their language to suggest they aren't qualified to judge complex matters. That's a comment by one Allison Cruz on a financial website bearing the same photograph as the country Facebook admin Allison Cruz, a trans woman at St. Catherine's College, who didn't respond when I contacted her. And this is another long article. And you know what? We're just about up to the brick wall of death on the 2-hour line. So, folks, as much as I'd like to go on with this article, even though we're Just a little over halfway through it. I'm going to cut it short here. And we need to wrap up episode number 52 of the Vanguard Report. Nick, final thoughts you want to share before we go black?
Just, I encourage everyone to check out my YouTube channel. That's Men's Rights Edmonton. Check out my YouTube channel. And lately, I've been, I'm going to be making more videos. And I've been reminding people that I do need donations because I'm having kind of hard times here. But I sing from my supper. I always try to provide some sort of content that I hope people will find interesting. And of course, please check it out anyway. Even if you don't want to help me out financially, I am still just trying to maintain and grow the activated non-feminist community here in Edmonton. We are having monthly meetings, and I intend to do that with or without donations. So, send us a message at mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube channel or go to the website www.mensrightsedmonton.com.
All right. In other words, Nick plans to continue fighting the good fight. So, here at the Vanguard Report, we have an email address. That would be the last Q on your Q list. I'm pretty sure that's Q number 5. That is Vanguard Report, one word, Vanguard Report, at USA.com. That's where you send all your love letters and your hate letters, or just your lukewarm letters. You want to contact us for any reason, that's how you do it. Vanguard Report at USA.com. And we're about to wrap it up now. Boy, we just burned right through those 2 hours, didn't we? Remember, feminism is what we say it is. We have one goal in mind, and that is to bring about the social death of feminism, to so rouse people against feminism that they are not afraid to speak openly against it, to mock it, to critique it, to ridicule it. We want the man on the street to be mocking feminism in his rude and crude way, and we want the scholars in the ivory towers to be deconstructing feminism in their sophisticated way. It's all good, all across the board, all across the spectrum. We think feminism is just a terrible idea that's done so much harm to the world. It's a social cancer. It needs to go before it kills all of us. So that's where we're coming from. We are non-feminist, meaning we are not feminist. Remember, a non-feminist is an anti-feminist waiting to happen. And an anti-feminist is a non-feminist in a hurry. And every feminist knows deep in their guts that there's really no difference between a non-feminist and an anti-feminist. Anything that does not submit to feminism is effectively against feminism. And every feminist deep in the back of their brain knows this. So, feminism is what we say it is. We are taking control of the language and the narrative. We are defining feminism and the whole context that goes with it. Feminism is what we say it is. To hell with the dictionary. We're rewriting the dictionary. Feminism is, categorically is what we say it is. Spread the word, that is the gospel. Everybody, see you next week for episode number 53 of the Vanguard Report. Until that time, be excellent to each other. And see you next week. Ciao.